Hello, and welcome. I see some familiar faces, and I see some new faces, and it's just so exciting to see all of you here today. My name is Audra Anderson, and I am currently a product manager for neurosurgical specialty products at Aesculap, which is a B. Braun medical company. I am also currently serving as the membership committee chair for PWH, and I will be your host for this session. This session, how to become an empowering leader in today's industry, we will explore how to enhance the impact of your leadership style by refining your coaching skills, building confidence and competence. And I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize DeKalb Corporation for their generous sponsorship of this session. From all of us at PWH, we thank you. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Erin Marks, who is a marketing manager at DeKalb Corporation, and she will have the honor to introduce our today's speaker. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. How are you? How was lunch? Good. Karen Triola is an organizational development consultant with Caliber and has well-developed expertise as a platform trainer and learning and development manager. Karen honed her skills in more than 10 years of experience with leading organizations in the insurance and entertainment industries. She brings an in-depth understanding of HR topics, instructional design, and excellent presentation skills to her partnerships with Caliber clients. Prior to joining Caliber, Karen partnered with leadership teams to develop relevant and innovative solutions for producing the highest levels of employee performance. Her areas of expertise include management development, team building, employee engagement, and career planning. Karen holds a bachelor's degree in communications from Douglas College, Rutgers University, and holds a professional in human resources certification. She also spearheaded and served as Toastmaster president for her local chapter. Please join me in welcoming Karen Triola.
Hello, everybody. I am really excited to have the opportunity to be here today. I want to share with you that just last week, I had a conversation with a younger colleague of mine who told me that he was resigning from his role. And the reasons he was resigning from his role were that in the 5 years he was with the company, he didn't receive feedback on his performance, didn't have development conversations with his manager, and didn't have an opportunity to make decisions about what he felt was meaningful in his role. So he decided to move on. Unfortunately, that isn't very uncommon about what's been happening in the workplace. So I want to talk to you today about how you can avoid that happening to you and with your organizations by sharing with you coaching as a style of leadership and how you can leverage it so that you can retain your talent by empowering the people on your teams to lead, improve team performance, and ultimately business results. So let's talk about how we're going to do this today and what we're going to accomplish. We're going to talk about how leaders can create a coaching environment and share with you a framework for having a coaching conversation and learn 2 essential skills that you can apply as soon as you leave here today. And the best way for you to be able to engage in this conversation today, 2 things. 1, by being present in this conversation today. And you could do that by sharing your experiences, because the best way leaders learn is by sharing your experiences, being engaged. So to make this very meaningful for you, I want you to ask as many questions as possible throughout the presentation. Feel free to ask questions along the way. It needs to be meaningful for you. And the second way you can participate today and make it meaningful for you is by applying what you learn. You'll notice on your seat, you had some worksheets. So we're going to use those worksheets today. I want you to reflect along the way and jot things down. And specifically, I want you to be thinking about, during this time we're together, situations in which you can apply the techniques, the strategies that we talk about with people back at your workplace. So who are team members that you have that you can be thinking about and apply what we talk about as soon as you get back? And that's the best way for us to change behavior. So let's get started and jump right in. Let's start by talking about the two ends of the communication spectrum. So let's imagine this side is the telling side of the spectrum, and this side is the asking side of the spectrum. Sometimes it's going to be okay to tell our employees and give them the answers to their problems, and you're going to represent that side. Just as it's equally okay to ask. So if this side represents the telling side of the spectrum, and you could just yell it out, maybe stand up so everyone could hear your answer, what would be some of the benefits of telling our employees what to do? Efficiency. Clarity. Accuracy.
Get it done the way you want it.
Even this side said, I can tell them what to do. Get it done, yeah. She's booted to that side. Yeah, get it done the way you want them to do it. Have that control. How about asking side? What are the, thank you, telling side. What about asking side? What are the benefits of being on the asking side? Collaboration. Power.
New way to do things.
New way to do things. Engagement. I heard the telling side helping. Was there one more in the telling side? Different perspective. Yeah. So the key point here is that as leaders, I'm not saying you always have to be on the asking side. But for the rest of our session today and moving forward when we're talking about coaching, I want you to stay on the asking side as much as possible to experience the power of well-asked, open-ended questions, because that is the essence of coaching and being able to empower the people on our teams. And I'm even going to take it a step further and challenge you. You have as one of your handouts, it's actually the last one, a list of good open-ended questions. We'll talk about this throughout our time together today, but I want you to start thinking about expanding your library of questions. So as I speak today and you learn from people in this audience, start jotting down good open-ended questions that you hear so you have an expanded library of questions. Start circling, highlighting the questions you see on that sheet so you can ask them as soon as you get back today and use them with people on your teams. So we talked about, and I said at the very beginning, we're talking about leveraging coaching as a style of leadership. As leaders, we know we have to use different styles of leadership to get the results that we need with our teams. And I want you to be thinking about what are the results you're currently getting with your team members. And if you're not getting the results that you need, then try something else. Coaching is a style of leadership that focuses on guiding, supporting, helping team members get to where they need to be. It can be very effective in developing and retaining key talent. So let's talk about a framework that you can start using right away to help guide these conversations. And I want you to think about it similar to a recipe. So imagine a recipe you have very first time you're making something. You most likely have to have the recipe up on the internet. Maybe you've got it on your iPad. The first time you make it, the important thing is you need to know step by step what you need to do. Similar to this process I'm going to share with you, the first time may be a little bit more challenging. You're going to have to figure out the steps and what you need to do. But the key of a recipe is obviously the more you do it, the better you get at it. But what you need to really know about a recipe are the ingredients. What are the key ingredients to success? And that's what we're sharing today, the key ingredients to success for having a coaching conversation. But just as with the recipe, you're going to add a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of your own to make it work for you and maybe your family or your friends, whomever you're making that recipe for. Same thing with a coaching conversation. You're going to add a little bit of this and a little bit of that to make sure it works for you and the person you're coaching. It is not a one-size-fits-all. Make sense so far? So let's go through the key ingredients of a coaching conversation. And we're going to dive into this for the rest of our time together. It starts with knowing the current state. So where are they right now? What's happening in their world? And then the ideal state. How do they want it to be? And you're going to be asking some questions back to your question sheet that you've got. First, by establishing focus. You've got to establish focus for the coaching conversation. Could be a half-hour conversation. Maybe they initiated with you. Maybe you initiated that conversation. But what's going to be the end state? What do you need to accomplish during this conversation? You're not solving the problem for them. And for some of us, that's going to push us out of our comfort zone because we're very accustomed to solving people's problems for a lot of different reasons. So this may very much push us out of our comfort zone. Step one is going to push us out of our comfort zone. And I want you to be thinking about that for yourself. Which parts of this model are you really finding a comfort zone for you, a strength, and which part may really push you out of your comfort zone and be a challenge for you? Step one, the key ingredients, establish focus. Joe comes to you and says, oh my God, Fred, he will not collaborate with me. I cannot get his buy-in in order to move my project forward. So now instead of you solving it, we've got to come up with a plan to address this with Fred. So then you discover some options. And who's doing the discovering in this? You or Joe? Joe. You're going to ask lots of questions. You're opening up Pandora's box in a good way. So you're going to ask, okay, so what have you tried with Fred specifically? What do you think Fred's expecting? What do you think is holding back Fred? What's the value of asking those questions of Joe? Reflection of what's happened so far. I heard.
Just getting Fred to start, or Joe to start thinking about what Fred's point of view might be.
Absolutely. Thinking of what Joe's point of view is. This kind of questioning is so important as you're empowering people to think on their own, make decisions. Why? Because behavior change starts with a mental shift. You cannot do something differently until you think about it differently. So if you want people on your team to make decisions on their own in a meaningful way to their work, we have to help them think about it differently before they can do something about it differently. Then you're going to help them plan the action, narrow down the option. Option A, option B, Joe, what are you thinking are the benefits of each? Which one do you think is going to make the most sense to move forward with? Then overcome the barriers, a step most of us forget, and one of the most important steps in the process. So it's ensuring that he's got the right resources he needs. He's thinking about, so what's this conversation gonna sound like? What might be Fred's reaction when you approach him? How might you go about having this conversation? When are you thinking about having this conversation? What might get in your way of having this conversation? And then recapping it. What is your next first step, Joe? When is a good time, and how should we follow up to see how the conversation went? From established focus all the way to the recap, what happened? What stood out to you in that process?
The coach wasn't actually doing the action.
Yeah, they didn't do it. Absolutely, you didn't do it. What was your role in that process?
Orchestrating it.
Yeah, you orchestrated it. How?
Help Joe make the plan.
You helped Joe make the plan. Yeah, you empowered him to make a decision on his own. So how do these conversations happen? What needs to happen in your company, in your organizations? You have to be sure that the environment supports it. There's a culture that enables these conversations to occur. And there are some key elements that need to be there in your companies, within your organizations, within your teams, for these kinds of conversations to happen, for people to feel comfortable, to want to initiate these conversations with you, for you to initiate conversations with the people on your teams. It's not just going to happen. So some key things that need to be there. It starts with the intention. The intention of the person you're speaking to. It has to be focused on Joe's goals, Joe's objectives, moving him towards improving his performance, his career forward. There has to be forward momentum in where he wants to see himself go. It could be on moving him towards reaching his potential. What it's not focused on is proving you're right, proving you're the boss. And then the relationship. Think about the culture. It has to be built on mutual respect, that two-way street there. It's your chance to think about, as leaders, and thinking of yourself, leaders within the organization, being authentic in every interaction that you have with the people that you work with day in and day out. Every little thing you do as a leader counts. You need to be that role model. You need to be thinking about every person that you interact with day to day is an equal, that they have something of value to contribute to you. And think about it as you're sitting in your seats. Is there somebody on your team that you need to be building a relationship with because you know that that's not occurring right now? There isn't that kind of relationship you have with that person on your team. And then it's the words that you use. I always think of this as the how of leadership. They need to be specific, relevant, not, again, a one-size-fits-all. You are showing you know what they're facing every day in their world. You're interested in what's happening in their world, what they're up against. And it's using words sparingly because you're talking less. It's the 80-20 rule. And when you do talk, you're asking questions. You're doing the listening. When those three elements are in place, that's when trust is possible. And without trust in your organization, then it's very difficult to create a culture where coaching conversations are possible, and you can have a culture where you're able to empower the people on your teams. So you may be sitting there thinking, so, wow, do I have what it takes to be a coach? Do I have the personality to be a great coach, the qualities? The good news is coaches come in all sizes, all shapes, all personalities. You need to be self-aware and consistently be reflecting on which pieces, which elements of what it takes to build trust come easy for me, what's a natural strength for me, and where maybe I might be challenged. So to build on that further, let's take a look at your personal coaching shift assessment to see where you might start making some of those shifts yourself as a coach. So if you take that out, I want you to cover the right-hand side of the sheet. So you're just covering the right-hand side. And if I could have one volunteer to just start out loud reading the left-hand side. Who wants to? Oh, thank you. So you're just going to start reading the left-hand side, and we're going to be listening intently.
Focusing only on results, controlling the employee's actions, creating a fear of consequences, focusing on weaknesses, pointing out failures, errors, reinforcing a we-they culture, solving all the problems, listening to what employees are saying, setting an expectation of long hours, being the source of approval.
Thank you. So let's hear from you. What would it feel like to work in that environment? Describe it. What are some words? Exhausting. Demoralizing. Suffocating. What was the last one? Not motivating. Totally demotivating. Anything else come to your mind? Not fun. Intimidating. Get out. Yeah. Absolutely. If you were somebody who wants development and feedback, like the person who I spoke to, and this is a true story, last week, who told me about leaving their job, is this somewhere you'd want to work at? If you're trying to create a coaching environment and empower people on your teams, is this a culture supportive of that? Based on your own experiences, and let's be honest, let's be honest with your own experiences, is there a particular area on that left side where you would say, yeah, based on your own experiences, that management really needs to work on? Because you've seen this happen. This is reality. Is there one that stands out to you on the left side that's happening now? And you could just call it out, one that stands out to you. Focusing on results. Focusing on weaknesses. Reinforcing the we-they culture. So hearing from you, even though we describe this as with a lot of adjectives, we wouldn't want our companies to promote or describe in any way, and we probably wouldn't want to work there. Not uncommon that a lot of this is still currently happening in certain pockets of organizations. So my ask of you is to think about for yourselves. Take this is the application piece. Take time after we're together today, whether it's later today or at some point, and actually go through this for yourself. Look for what I call coachable moments for you as a leader. Or, in addition, I'll say, use this with leaders that you work with. And look for those coachable moments where you know I need to work on this for myself or with people who report to me. and we need to make some shifts. And the next part of that is to find someone you trust. I call them accountability partners. So someone who's going to hold your feet to the fire in helping you take the specific actions you need to make those shifts. Because if we're not looking at ourselves and what we need to be doing differently in order to support creating that culture, a coaching culture, then we're not going to be able to do what we're looking to do. Any comments or questions about that? Okay, and anytime you think of something, feel free. So let's build now. Remember, we said part one of creating this coaching environment, we talked about the 3 elements that are going to help you build trust, and you need trust in order to be sure we can create this environment, or else all of your intentions of having these conversations are going to fall flat. The second part was looking at yourself. Where are your strengths? Where are some of your challenges? And using that sheet to start thinking about where you might have to make some shifts within your own style. Now I want to build on that by talking about the 2 essential coaching skills. Listening plus, which is helping people on your team feel acknowledged and heard, and questions to discover, to move people to action. Let's start with listening. And we're talking about listening plus. Listening plus is taking active listening to the next step. It's listening not only for the words someone says, but the context of the message, the emotion, the essence of what they're trying to say. So it's really being able to listen to not only what that person's saying, but you're really listening to what they're trying to get across, that message they're trying to send. So what do you need to do as a listener? You need to get rid of all the distractions. That means you're getting rid of email. You're getting rid of the phone. Maybe people who are trying to knock at the door. You're being fully present. You're also trying to not think about what you want to say in reply to what that person's speaking to you about. Those counter arguments you may already have in your head. It also means staying so focused, even if that person is boring, was trying to say 20 words that could be said in 5. You're still trying to stay as focused as you possibly can. And that becomes really challenging. The way we can show we're listening is to clarify, ask questions. 2 key phrases that can be helpful. So what you're saying is, what you mean is what I think you're saying. So what you're saying is what I think you're saying is. Use some kind of phrase that will help you clarify what that person is saying. Now, if you're trying to show that you're really listening to somebody, you want to keep in mind that 93% of what people communicate comes through their nonverbal communication. So use that. Use your nonverbal communication in how you communicate and show you're listening to somebody, and to pick up not only on verbal cues, but nonverbal cues, so you can really capture what people are saying beyond just their words. So you can capture that back to them, that passion that's coming from them, that frustration, the anger, the annoyance. Think about, so it sounds like you're angry. It sounds like you're frustrated. It sounds like you're disappointed. Try to capture what the emotion is. What happens if you're wrong? They'll tell you. It's a great way to clarify. So use that nonverbal communication, your eye contact, your body language, your tone of voice, even silence. Silence can be very powerful in communication, in trying to really hear what someone's trying to tell you. Don't be afraid of silence. So what I'd like us to do now is to practice, because the only way you get really good at communicating and being an effective listener is to practice as much as you possibly can. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just turn to a partner, somebody that you're sitting next to, and here's the ask. There's going to be a speaker and a listener. The speaker is going to speak for 1 minute, and you're going to speak about something you're passionate about. It could be favorite book, hobby, vacation, something you heard today at the conference that really resonated with you. The listener's job is to listen. You're not going to say a word, but you're going to listen. And keep in mind some of the things we just talked about, how you can maybe show you're listening. After the minute, though, the speaker is going to let the listener know, I'll put the instructions up, the essence of what you heard in less than 1 sentence. Okay, 1 sentence. Try not to do it more than 1 sentence. Capture the emotion, the feeling, what you heard beyond the words, the essence of what you heard. The speaker can let you know if you got it right or wrong, and then switch roles. Okay? I'm going to empower you to do this on your own, switch roles, and both give each other feedback on what you heard, and then we'll debrief. Questions about what we're doing?
So the listener is not supposed to ask open-ended questions?
You're only exactly. We're only practicing listening. We're not asking questions yet. Hard to do, right? So you're focused. You're completely focused. Much feedback. Did you guys finish? You finished? Okay, so it should be done. Okay, so I've got a few questions for you. So how did the listeners do? Did they capture the essence of your message?
Yes.
Yeah. Was there anybody who maybe didn't get it exactly right? Everybody did a great job, huh? Wow, that's amazing. If only it was always that easy. Good, excellent. How did you minimize distractions? You were really close, so I know it was a little bit more challenging. But how did you minimize distractions and really key in on the feeling, the emotion somebody was trying to get through? Eye contact, really helpful. Really looking at the person. What else? Shifted yourself. So really being able to sit in front of somebody and pay attention, focus in.
We care about each other.
So you already have established relationship. You care about each other. So you know that person already.
Yeah, I could have written this statement without listening.
Without even listening, yeah. So think about how that relates back to the 3 elements we talked about, that relationship, that authenticity we were talking about, really making people feel heard, acknowledged, understood, and how important that is for people to feel that when you're listening to them. And how we know that, but when we're out in the work and every day and we're reactive and we're busy and we don't have the time, it becomes that much more challenging. So the difference when you know somebody versus you're trying to build a relationship with somebody. Go ahead.
So how do you do this? I have a team that's really, dispersed out in the field, so a lot of the communication is over the phone. How do you make that same connection over the
Yeah.
from a distance?
That's a great question. So virtual teams are much more common now than they were in the past. So thinking of ways that you can have recurring meetings, utilizing technology, and certainly asking experience of others, but I found that using Google Hangouts, any kind of technology, Skype, whatever works at your organization, but making it so that there's more chance there's engagement and people are present because there's that video component to it. So if there's any way to do that, that can be really helpful. If you don't have that opportunity, keeping in mind that when you're on the phone with somebody, the same body language becomes really important, that you're still getting rid of all the distractions, and things like smiling on the phone still becomes really important. And we forget about that because people can tell if you're multitasking when you're having a conversation. And if you've ever done it and asked the other person, or if it's ever, actually think of it the other way around, when it's been done to you, and you can really get that sense that someone's not really paying attention. So looking for any ways to still have the same kind of communication with a person on a recurring basis. And then the second part of it, which we're going to dive into now, asking lots of questions. So you want to make sure, if you've ever heard about it, if it's a new team, something called a team contract. So has anyone ever heard of that, a team contract or social contract? So if you're building a new team, how important it becomes to know how that team member really wants to communicate. What's the best way we can communicate? What's the best way for us to set expectations with each other? What's the best way for us to make decisions and hold each other accountable? So what are our ground rules? So starting there of what are the ground rules that we should have, or group agreements, you can call them different things. And starting with that and then moving to all the other questions are great ways to set the team up for success so everybody's on the same page. So they know what those ground operating rules are for the team. So every time you get on the phone, every time you have a meeting, we're all on the same page. That remember, we said Respect is really important in conversations. No bad idea there's no bad ideas on this team. We're gonna be patient with each other because we have different learning styles. Elmo is one of my favorite. Enough, let's move on. So whenever we have a meeting and somebody goes on a tangent, we're gonna call Elmo on each other and make sure it goes on a parking lot. But having these group operating agreements become really important, and at the senior level, I've done it with every senior team I've ever worked on, because they need to have those up too, because remember, we're very different in personalities. So for senior level meetings, lots of ideas come up, but we may not move to action. So we've got to have these kinds of operating agreements with each other of what's the best way for us to communicate, support each other in order to move forward and get to the business. So having those kinds of ideas with each other and agreements really make it so that people know what to expect from each other going forward. So good job. But I do want to make sure that you keep in mind, it's really important to continue to practice this and know, again, what comes easy for you and what to challenge. And the only way for you to know this is to create a feedback loop. That means asking people out in the organization, so how am I being perceived as a listener? And asking for that direct feedback. Without it, we don't know how we're being perceived. We may think we're a really good listener, but maybe we're not really coming across as a good listener. So the other key skill I want to make sure we talk about is asking questions. Because to be a really good listener, you have to ask really good questions. It's part of being a good listener. If you look again at that sheet of caliper power discovery questions, I wanted to tell you why I called them caliper power discovery questions, to make sure you had that answer. And the reason is because Caliper, the company that I work for, is a personality assessment. So it's important for you to be thinking about your own motivators, your own personality, as you are coaching somebody else in addition to the other person. One of the biggest mistakes we make as leaders is trying to motivate somebody based on what motivates us. We think, if it works for me, it must work for the people who report to me. And that's usually not the case. So if you're somebody who is very urgent, you like fast results, and maybe you're also somebody who is very creative. You may find the way that you like to be coached yourself is to move really fast and to get a lot of ideas out on the table. So when you coach others, you may find that you lack a lot of patience because you want things to move really fast. And that may get in your way. Or you may find that you like a lot of control. You like things done a certain way. And that may get in your way of being really effective as a coach because you like that control of how things get done because it works for you. So that's some of the things you want to be thinking about of what's getting in your way of being successful at empowering others and coaching others, letting go. And that's something you want to be thinking about with these questions. Good questions are questions that are helping others discover, that's the discovery part, where they want to go. Remember, it's the intention, their goals. They're open-ended questions, they are not leading questions. So you're not asking questions that are leading them in a direction you want them to go. Does that make sense to everybody? And that's really hard to do. I'll be totally open with you. It's probably the most difficult thing for us to do as leaders because we have in our mind where we want them to go. So when we ask a question and we're saying, maybe a lot of you right now are thinking, I ask lots of questions. I think I'm really good at asking questions. But think about the quality of the questions you're asking. So are you asking, well, did you think about this? How about working with so-and-so? How about doing it this way? So it's thinking about the kinds of questions you're asking. You want them to be open-ended, and you want them to be moving the person forward. Becomes really important. So as you look at those questions, another thing to maybe think about is not only ensuring that you're helping them discover, you're not asking leading questions, but try to stay away from why questions. So why could potentially make somebody feel defensive. So why didn't you think of going to Susie for the answer? Or why didn't you do it this way? Think about approaching it in a different way and starting with what or how, some other way of introducing it to the person to get them to think about it in a different way. And avoid stacking questions. So asking Joe, so what do you think Fred's thinking about? What do you think is holding him back? Asking him 3 questions in a row is just going to confuse him. So and if you're that fast thinker, that may be something that is a tendency of yours, to just ask a lot of questions at one time. So keep in mind, keys to asking questions, you're thinking about what may be holding you back and asking really good questions, and think about the other person. What motivates them? Do they need a very direct, straightforward approach, or do they need more time to think, come to their own conclusions, and to process things? So maybe it's a 2-part meeting. Sometimes maybe you need 15 minutes with them, and then they need some time to think about what those options are. So it takes a lot of patience to get to know somebody else's style. And you can only find that out through trial and error and having lots of conversations with the people on your team. Take a look at that list of questions. And I want you, as you leave today, circle again the ones that you really like, how you're going to incorporate those in a conversation, and make them your own. So you don't necessarily have to ask them the way they're listed there. You certainly could change it so that it makes sense and the language fits your own style. Check that. So we still have a little bit of time. So I'm going to say what I'd love for you to do is pick somebody else that you sit next to, and we have 5 minutes. So the person next to you, if you just want to practice, they could tell you, just 5 minutes, so only one person is going to share maybe a challenge they're having, and you're going to ask them just 2 questions from the list to move that conversation forward. Okay, so one person share a challenge they're having with a direct report, and a person could just ask 2 questions to move it forward. They're not answering, okay? You're not answering the question. Just practice feeling what it's like to ask a question. Yeah, I'm going to have them wrap it up now, and then do you want to come up and just do a... Yeah, then you need to come up, right? Yes. Okay. Okay, so I know you might not have had a lot of time to ask, but if you did get a chance, so I know you didn't get a lot of time to ask those questions. For anybody who did get a chance to ask a question, let me ask, what did you find easy about asking those questions? Anything you found easy about asking questions, listening to somebody share a challenge? Easy versus, go ahead.
Making recommendations.
Was that easy or hard?
That was hard to
Hard. Yeah, not coming up with a solution right away, making recommendations. Yeah, anything else easy or challenging about just asking questions? Easy to make a connection, so a strength, so that's strength to make that connection. Good.
I feel like the person felt welcome to sharing what they thought the answer was rather than felt attacked by asking
Good.
why questions.
Yeah, so good. So yeah, felt welcome again, more the connection. So not asking why questions is good. 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 So quick practice to be able to do that. And usually, from my experience, that's a lot of what I'll hear in common. As leaders, it can be a lot of practice to not just step in and just solve the problem. And a lot of our questions become challenging because we're thinking, I know how this person should do this. So I'm trying to just ask questions to lead them down that path. And that becomes the hardest part. And timing-wise, you're thinking, I don't have a lot of time to move this along, so can we speed this up? So think about how you can incorporate questions and practice that. Because remember what the end game here is. Empowering people to feel that they have control over their workplace to make meaningful decisions about their own jobs. And that's what you want to be able to do as an empowering leader. So the more I can encourage you to practice asking questions that will help lead people that way, the faster it goes. Eventually, it goes fast, believe me. And remember what it means to you: retaining talent, improving team performance, and improving business results. And you working on the projects that are strategic to the organization and not as involved with the day-to-day. It takes time and practice. So I want to now make sure you can come up and wrap it up for us. Thank you so much for your time, and want to be able to make sure we can wrap it up. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Karen. So in summary, what I got was coaching is guiding. It is an opportunity to develop key talent. You start with identifying the current state and your ideal state, and you basically perform a gap analysis, and that becomes your coachable moment. And to remember that one size does not fit all. So your call to action would be look for those coachable moments. Be present by being engaged. You ask good questions, and you apply what you've learned today at your workplace and move people to action. So that's what I got for today's session. Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you to Cal. Thank you to all of the participants today, and I'll see you at the next session.